Hey, hope you're having an amazing day. Cutie's Creations here with another message on the restitution, which means, AKA 40 acres and a mule reparations. We're calling it restitution now because of the fact that there are lives that have been lost in the process of this, and thousands of them, probably without the number, I'm going to hold off of saying millions. So I'm going to say hundreds of thousands, and millions have suffered irreparable damage. Our populations haven't grown large enough for us to possibly say millions, but without me having the factual information, I'm not going to go there. But I know that millions of African Americans have suffered through loss and discrimination and disregard and cognitive dissonance because of how America has viewed us and how they have allowed other cultures that we have given them their civil liberties have come here and disregard us just as much as well. Now, I'm not going to put them on the backs of every single American that this has happened, because there have been plenty of Americans that have stood with us, who have made sure that we have had certain things in our society and everything. So that would be wrong of me to not acknowledge that there are people who seen these disparities and said, no, we stand with you. So it's not every single person, but we have all, including African Americans, have stood on the sidelines and allowed these things to happen to us when we weren't fighting. Because of the way that they had institutionalized our mind, we didn't know for a very long time that these disparities came from a certain entity. And because of that, we allowed it to keep going on. When you enslave someone's mind, it's much harder to get out of that than slavery itself, because once the slavery is done, if you institutionalize somebody's mind, then you have them for generations to come, because they're going to teach their kids that, and then those kids are going to teach their kids that, and so on and so forth. So when they enslaved us, yes, we suffered a lot of disparities and everything, but the mental after was so detrimental for us that we still suffer from it to this day, and it has affected our physical health because of that mental. It has affected our financial health. It has affected our educational health. It has affected every single facet of our lives, because we haven't gotten too far away from the mental part of it, and we destroy ourselves in the midst of that because of the ignorance. So we're going to go into the education part again today. So we talked about the birth of it. Then we talked about them wanting public education for all during the 1830s and into the 1865s. So today we're going to talk about the rise of high schools, mid-1800s to 1900s. As industrialization progressed, the need for skilled workers led to the expansion of secondary education. High schools became more common, focusing on practical subjects alongside classical education, transitioning towards a more comprehensive curriculum that included vocational training. So as things started to progress in industrialized cities, now keep in mind, pay attention to the timeline, we have now gotten our freedom. And because of that, the cities and everything still need to be built, but they can't be built off the backs of us. And the ones who were still being built off the backs of us and everything were having a hard time with being able to employ people, even as indentured servants, because they didn't have the education to be able to get these jobs. So opportunity is lacking when you don't have the education as well. So they started thinking about ways for them to be able to do that. Now, some of these high schools that they're talking about, we had already started institutionalizing a lot of our high schools and making them regular, but because they wanted a piece of that pie, those American dollars from us, yes, they started to being able to educate the colonizers' children. So they wanted to make sure that they got these opportunities, but how can you get these opportunities with a lack of education? So they started putting a lot of these vocational schools in. Now, we had already had this established. And not to say that white America didn't have it established either. They started to establish it too, but it wasn't on a grander scale. You can't bring people into the fold that don't know what they're doing and try to teach them as you're flying the plane off. A lot of times you have to have some form of education prior to. So what they were doing was making sure that they had some type of training and education, and that was the birth of high school. But as they learned, you needed a little bit more than that. So that's when a lot of the universities came into play. And if you didn't have an astronomical amount of money, you couldn't afford to send your kid to college. But you would have enough money. Well, the free education was where it was at. And that's basically what they're talking about when they're saying make America great, where you could have been able to go into the mill and be able to get a job in the steel mills and in the factories and all of that. And you didn't have to have a high school education in order for you to do that. And that's what they're talking about, that you got on the job training and that you were able to do these simple jobs. And once the rise of unions came about, they couldn't mistreat you anymore. So all of this came in between that time, and all of it came with the birth of the civil rights movement, with the boycotting, with all of that stuff and everything. They learned how to organize through us. I'm not going to take everything away from other people and what they were doing and everything. There has been plenty of people who have fought long and hard in our country and had done a really good job. But what I'm telling you is, if you look at the timelines in which these are being played out, they are being played out from off the backs of African Americans' fight and their struggle, and them learning from us and how we learned how to fight, and when they learned how to organize, how to beat the system, how to make sure that laws are changed in the direction of the people, how to make sure that your people that you elected, and to take back your electoral power. A lot of people weren't voting, and then they start telling them, hey, you need to go and vote. And that's when they started making up all these voter laws and trying to dissuade people from voting and everything, because they knew that if we got lawmakers in there that cared about making it fair, then they wouldn't have a chance and to keep making it unfair. So all of these things kept coming into play that would make it more equal, and then people were fighting to make it less equal. So I'm saying all this to say that when you look at these timelines on how industries were built, how cities were made, how things were developed, they were developed off the backs of us. And people soon forget that. And when we start getting equal rights and having a way to be able to feed our families in the most basic of ways, I'm not talking about anything huge. I'm not talking about investments and all of that and everything. I'm talking about basic needs of investments like education, healthcare, finance, and judicial reform. These are all very basic things. Very, very basic. I'm not talking about stocks and bonds. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about having your basic needs met so you can have a more perfect union in this country. I'm not talking about becoming millionaires or anything like that, although with the 2.9 million dollars, Black America will become millionaires, but that will be soon spent for you to be in the hundreds of thousandaires. Because we need it so bad, it's going to go back into the system. That's the reason why people market us so much, because we are the biggest consumers. When you consume so much because you are a buyer, people target you to be able to get you to buy from them. And if you put $2.9 million into every African American home, trust me, the economy will recover quite easily, because we're going to know what to do with that money. We're going to be able to get ourselves out of debt. We're going to buy homes. We're going to buy cars. We're going to have better education. We're going to buy better clothes and everything. You know, we love labels and expensive things, and being able to invest in ourselves. So putting that type of money back into the system putting it into us is putting it back into the system. That's what I'm saying. Every time you've seen an economic downturn, when you see them give us some type of a stimulus or anything like that, it goes into our neighborhoods first, because we will spend. People with money, they've had money. They're not the spenders. They're not people who actually spend it back into the economy, because they really have bought everything that they need. If you have money, then you probably have more than one property. There's no reason for you to go out and buy more property. Some people who are in real estate will, but not everybody's in real estate. If you have money already, you've already acquired all the cars that you need, so you're not going to be buying cars all like that. If you have money, you don't need to go and get further education and everything, so you're not putting it into there. You've already gotten all the clothes. What I'm saying is your spending is few and far in between. You spend more on travel. When you do put your money in, it's to invest, so it sits there. It's being saved somewhere. And when you are poor and you need more, because the things you buy most likely aren't quality, so they don't last long, so you're going to be buying quite often and spending a lot into the system and everything. That's the reason why the middle class was so important in our country. That's the reason why poor people are so important in our country. And that's the reason why they want us to return to being poor, because the more consumers they have, the richer they get. They're not spending their money. We are spending ours to fund them. So when you put $2.9 million in the hands of African Americans, you are going to see a recovery of the economy. You are going to see industries pop up. You are going to see a lot of middle class wealth again, because we are going to funnel that in. All we need is the financial backing, and then some education, some finance, and some judicial reform, as well as healthcare with the focus on mental health, so we could be able to recover the proper way. It may seem like, oh, you're asking for all of this and everything, but these are basic. If you look at what they're fighting for in Congress and in Senate and everything, these are the things that they're fighting for. And most of the time when they are fighting, they're fighting for us, because they know that people with money don't need these things. But when they go to fight for them, they fight for them for people who are under that want to recover in the middle class or are already poor. And when they fight for these things, they are for us. We are that population, and that's why they don't want us to have that representation in politics, because of the fact that when we fight for us. So we want a more perfect union, and how do we get there? We get there through the means of education. We get there through the means of $2.9 million being given to our families. We get there by healthcare, free healthcare with the focus on mental health. We get there through finance and judicial reform. What does that look like for us? Well, the meat and potatoes are going to be put into the bill that I'm now writing, and there's going to be plenty of things that comes down the pike that I'm going to be working on to make sure that this happens. But it also starts with you, with my viewers, with people who believe in this movement, who want a more perfect union for all the people of America, and making sure that they level that playing field for African Americans, that say that we're not going to stand for this injustice anymore, and it's not a handout. We've earned it, and prove that you've earned it, and keep working for your country, because this is your country now and you are not outside of that. And anyone who tells you that have never really contributed the way that you have contributed, and your ancestors have contributed with blood, sweat, and tears in their lives. Not just blood, their lives. They have given their lives for this nation, and it's now time for them to acknowledge that, and by putting their money where their mouth is, not acknowledging it with a Juneteenth, which is nice. Hey, let's celebrate. I love it. Not acknowledging it by giving us a Martin Luther King Boulevard or a Martin Luther King Day. That's nice, but we need more than that. What we need is financial backing that will allow us to live in a more perfect union, by putting laws into place that will allow us to have something in this country that is more substantial than we ever had before. And we want it through the restitution. I thank you for your time, your energy, and all of the support. I have been fighting for this for a very long time, and have talked to numerous people about it and everything. And this year was the year that I was going to introduce it and really start putting it on a platform, making sure people hear about it, and gathering support for it all over the country, if not all over the world. People need to hear exactly what that contribution was like for us in this country, and to not have a reward at the end of it. And not a reward as in like some prize money. No, something that isn't even enough for lives lost, but it'll be enough for future generations to come to have some type of stability, so we can be able to move forward in the right direction. I thank you for your time and your energy. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below, and let me know what you think of this video. If you want more information on how to sign the petition, I will email it out to you. Check the description box down below. My email's down there. If you need more information, I will have the website up pretty soon. It's just because I'm building it myself. You know how we are. We get down like that. But it's going to be filled with tons of things that can actually help you, not just with the restitution, but with tons of things. But we will talk about that later on. But tomorrow we will be talking about education again, and how that is shaping us into a more perfect union, and the past coming into the present. So once again, you have an amazing day, and thank you so much.